jump into it unless you have any more questions.
No, that's great. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, just give us a couple minutes. There'll be a bit of silence here before we finish it off.
Man, I'm sweating. I'm so nervous.
Oh, don't be nervous. This is great. How was the book going so far? Is it when? How long has it been out?
Since like April 11, April 12, something like that.
Okay, so it's fairly new then. Okay, good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah. Oh yeah, I can't wait till it's on Audible.
yeah,
I'll
yeah. I mean,
definitely I'll definitely buy it again once, or I'll buy it this time once it's
sweet.
on
Oh,
Audible
sweet.
for sure. Because it's
Yeah, more and more people are just listening to audiobooks these days, so I need to get on that bandwagon.
yeah, totally. It's just so much like it's so much easier for me, especially with just that I can do just especially prepping for the show. I can do other things, or while I'm
Yeah,
driving or whatever. I sometimes have to
yeah,
go
yeah.
on long drives, so I can just get a whole book read in a day type thing. All right, tonight we've got Michael Ronin with us. He's an interdisciplinary cultural commentator, and he's an author with a new book, Modern Masculinity for the Conscious Man, Making Sense in Troubled Times. Thanks for coming on.
Guys, it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for allowing me to talk to you.
Yeah, it's great. Like we were saying before, I loved your book. It's one of my favorites. Honestly, it was it was kind of like no holes barred about modern masculinity. You didn't really hold anything back, which is great. And it really reminded me. Darren and I were kind of starting up sort of like another show a few years ago, and it was kind of about like a man transcending type thing. It was
Oh,
very
very nice.
very similar to some of the stuff that you talk about in your book, or at least like. So we've been thinking along this way for a while, but it was really good the way you put this book together that had not only stuff about masculinity, but about the control systems and about femininity and the divine union. And I just really loved it. So maybe we could just start with a little bit about yourself
Sure.
and then how you got into writing the book.
Yeah. So I've done so many different things in my life. It's led me down so many different avenues. This is my latest iteration. In the past I was a professional actor for several years. I was a teacher, a Montessori teacher. I've been let me think. I've been an account manager for a website development company, a baker, a farmer. I've worked in publishing, actually for a male interest magazine back in England, and worked in the government for one couple of agencies there. So, I kind of have this desire inside me to get as broad a range of experiences as possible, rather than becoming a subject matter expert or sticking with one profession. I guess I would be the perpetual novice.
Actually,
Um,
you name that in the book, and I meant to write a note about that because
the
it's
perpetual novice.
no. You named you. There was another name in there, and I always thought of it as almost like a dilettante. But there's some other name you used in the book, and
Oh,
I kind of have to do that too. Like I can't doing this show, and we do a couple shows a week now. I can't dig into anything really in depth. Although sometimes I kind of feel like it,
yeah,
but
yeah.
but I have to try and stay like kind of more of like a surface level with all these different things, which I also really love. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
So that basically makes us Renaissance men. I think the word you were looking for was philomath, which
Yes,
is
that's what it was. Yep.
it's a lover of learning and studying. And I just love to uncover and discover things which generally are not part of the collective awareness.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you guys do exactly the same thing with your podcast as well,
Exactly. Yeah.
which is what's appealing about it.
Yeah.
Um, and I could have chosen to be the sort of guy that goes around inventing great gizmos, or earning pots and pots of money, looking for to lead a powerful existence. But that's not who I am at my core. I guess essentially I'm a map maker. I look at the social landscape and I make a map, and then hopefully that map is then useful for other people to peruse. In fact, funnily enough, I was thinking about this today. My favorite fictional character is Bilbo Baggins in The Lord of the Rings, and he and I are very similar. He's a map maker as well. He made a map of Middle Earth. He spends his time writing books. he's very introverted, quiet. He keeps himself to himself. He loves his garden, and every now and then he goes out and has a great adventure. He goes out and challenges himself in the world, but not as an everyday act. It's just like a once or twice a lifetime. He gets out there and finds out who he really is in the real world. But my preference is basically books and learning, and making maps.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That makes sense, because you did tie a lot of things together in this book.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've actually come to regard men in a favorable light that I never previously was able to. I grew up with a tyrannical father and stepfather, and he was just an angry ratbag, and he pretty much made my life. He made my life miserable. I was verbally abused, physically abused, and grew up basically thinking that manhood was not something I should aspire to. If that's what's on offer, then you can shove it. So it took me a long time to deprogram myself from that sort of programming that he gave me, and I've now hold men in high regard, and I would even say that they are the fairer sex in many ways. But today, I look around me and I can see that many men are experiencing a crisis of masculinity. Men as a whole are now considered contemptible by society. They're subject to claims of their masculinity being toxic, or of having male privilege, or patriarchal privilege, if you like, or of being, born to be violent abusers or potential rapists. There's a rapist just waiting to get out of every single man. And I know that that's not the case. There are husbands who are subject to what's called divorce rape, which is coming into common parlance. And what that means is they're basically getting shafted by their wives and the wives' pit bull lawyers in family court, and losing half of their shit and losing their kids. And the system is rigged against them in family court, which we could get into later if you like.
Yeah.
There are so many things. It's like, there's the presence of men in colleges, which is declining and has been declining for a couple of decades now. Those kids that get into college are then just one step away from a false allegation of sexual abuse. And now they have these college tribunals, which are like these kangaroo courts, where you're summarily summarily judged as to whether or not you have transgressed in terms of some sort of sexual aggression against a woman, and then summarily expelled from college. It's so interesting that colleges are allowed to adjudicate as serious a case as rape, because why on earth wouldn't they adjudicate like murder in that case? If a murder takes place on a college, by the same token, what is to stop them from adjudicating a rape case?
Yeah.
A murder case.
Yeah.
And why on earth is this not in a court of law? Just like murders are. Rape should be in a court of law, but they're not. They're college tribunals.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So we
kind of know where the colleges are kind of they're indoctrination camps lately.
Yeah.
So it's not a surprise really that they can do
right.
that. So
yeah.
how did you, before we get too deep down that, how did you transform into how did your views about men transform, and how long ago did that happen? Did you have to participate in a bunch of group things with men, or did you what made you actually change your mind about that?
Yeah, back in 2012, in my community, a few of us got together and set up a men's group here. Initially I thought to myself, well, why just men? It seems very strange. Women have great perspectives to offer. It's not like they are clueless or have nothing valuable to offer and understandings of the world. Why should men separate themselves from women's understanding? So I came at it half-heartedly, but the group has been going on strong since then. It's still going on, and what I realized is that there are so many qualities that men exhibit that I now value, which I never even appreciated before. Um, and men are so stoic and so they're so stoic in the face of the pressures and the obstacles and the aggressions and slights that they face in their life that you don't really hear about them. They don't complain. Men don't complain in the same way that women do. And but in a men's group, that's what we do. We get together and we share with each other what is alive in us. What is it we're struggling with? How is life going wrong for us, as well as how is life going right for us? And we frame it in terms of breakdowns and breakthroughs. So a breakdown is obviously stuff that you're finding challenging, and breakthrough is like stuff that is bringing you joy in your life, because we also have to recognize that we need to celebrate that which is positive in our lives and take time to do that, and not just move on to the next job, which men are very capable of doing. Once the job is finished, well, go and get the next job, and not stop to actually celebrate it in and of itself. So, there are times when men need to talk to men about stuff which is on their minds, and know that they won't be policed by their intimate partner or women in general. And that's the value of men's group, is to come together and know that you are in good company, in company where men hold your best interests as sacrosanct, and where they're looking out for your best interests, where they have the greatest amount of goodwill towards you. So that's how the men's group is set up. It's a, if you want to use the term, it's a safe space. It's where men can get together and not be judged by each other, where we can actually be vulnerable and show each other our shadow aspects, show each other those parts of ourselves that we would rather nobody else know about, but that are there, that we just dare not talk about. The things that we are shameful about, the things that are deep and down and dirty, and the things we want to remain hidden. But part of our growth journey is to bring those things into the light, deal with them, and integrate them. And we need a place to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you notice? Do you ever think back on the UK and how you guys have such a different school and apprenticeship program? Like, I feel like that in the UK, people are they might have a little bit more meaning with occupation or with expertise in things, whereas North America, we just seem to be it seems to be like you look down on a lot of the certificates and stuff that you would get.
Right.
Like, I came a little bit from the aerospace industry, and we had a lot of people from England come over, and they're very, very knowledgeable and experts in these, apprenticeship programs and And I feel like that was like a main focus at some point. Do you think there's been a big shift there, or do you think that it's different than North America in that way?
I think there has been. Just to let you know, I haven't lived in Britain since 2003. I've been living in the United States since then, so I'm kind of out of touch with what's going down over there. But one of the government agencies I worked for was the National Economic Development Office, which was a tripartite organization bringing together government, the unions, and the employers to devise ways to help British industry work better and compete better. And at the time, this was back, I think in the 80s, we were actually looking at the German system of apprenticeships, the Meister system, and trying to model it for British industry, because we actually didn't have anything comparable. There was nothing really good that was going on. So in fact, the apprenticeship system in Britain had been on the decline for years, even before I started to look at it myself.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. So do you think that I wonder why I have that sound. I wonder if it was on the decline when I was learning about it, or if it was more of it's back. Like, maybe it was reinvigorated from your learning from the Germans, and it was back. It just seemed like in Europe in general, even, people had respect for their trade craft. There was a real respect for having a trade, and whether it was a baker or an electrician or a steel worker or an aerospace technician, like, I don't
Yeah,
know.
but blue collar workers in Britain are looked down upon. It's part of our ancient class system. Um, and anybody who has aspirations wants to get into university and get a scholarly degree, as opposed to going to a polytechnic, which I don't think they exist anymore. Everything has now been changed into university, but these used to be the trade schools,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
people who go to trade schools were very much looked down upon.
Huh. Interesting.
We have
Yeah.
polytechnics here and still.
Yeah.
That's what SAID
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. I thought that there was more of like even coming out of high school, you were kind of pushed or prodded into a trade where we were just sort of
Let
left to
loose.
flounder. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was leaving high school, I met with a careers advisor, and just to give you an idea of the level of competency and professionalism, I met with her, and she never reviewed my school records. She never talked to me to get to know me as a person, to know what my qualities and values are, and where I saw myself in life, and to dig deep. She just asked me two questions: do you want to be in banking, or do you want to be in insurance?
That's unbelievable.
That's it.
There you go.
Which did you pick?
I picked banking. Yeah, because I had no idea. I had no idea, and nobody was showing me how to find out what I wanted in life.
Yeah.
That wasn't much different here.
Yeah.
Huh. So now you realize the whole money system is just a big scam, anyways, right?
There you go. Absolutely.
So let's get back down to the book. Then I guess we should talk about modern masculinity. I guess defined kind of more or less, and then also the truth, the proto truths, the truths at the beginning as well, to sort of lay some context for this.
Sure. Yeah. So
Maybe say there's some trigger warnings for people in this chat a little bit.
yeah. So the book is very broad, and it covers so many different aspects that are not always related directly to masculinity. It relates to us being men as human beings. And so we're multifaceted individuals, and we're not just like John Wayne characters, trying to beat our chests and be alpha males all the time. There's so much nuance to how we walk through life, and every male is different from every other male, which makes writing a book about masculinity a little problematic, but I kind of address that in the book. But fundamentally, every man, and of course every woman, but I'm writing this from a male perspective, every man has what I call true nature. And these were the original instructions that we were given, if you like, by our creator. Whether or not you believe in God, we were endowed with these essential directions encoded in our being. And I'm not just talking about DNA encoding, but every child is born with a particular temperament. And I used to be a Montessori teacher. I taught 3 to 5 year olds, and you could see this. I mean, before they did, at that stage in their existence, they've received very little programming from society, and you get to see what the true human being really looks like. And they're different from each other. They're not, every human being born is different from every other human being. We're born with a particular gleam, if you like. And the way I describe it in the book is that there exists within us this intrinsic aspect, just as the image of an oak tree is contained within the acorn. So we also have an intrinsic aspect contained within us, like an image of what we're going to grow and become. So the acorn is going to grow and become an oak tree. Now, the acorn doesn't know exactly what sort of environment it's going to be planted in, doesn't know if it's going to be eaten at some point in its lifetime before it even gets to be a tree, but it knows it's an acorn, and it's its job to basically fulfill its potential. It's brought into existence with the desire to become the biggest and baddest oak tree in existence, and to become one of those majestic oak trees. And of course, not every acorn ends up like that. The same is true of human beings. We have encoded in us our true nature, and from the time we're born, we are presented with an environment which either selects for the fullest expression of us or doesn't. And we receive programming from our parents, our teachers, our school, our society, and we're trained by them to ignore and repress certain aspects that we contain within us, and until we find them harder and harder to see at all, as we turn into adults. By the time we become adults, we've received so much programming that we have very little reference to who we really are at the basic level. You know, who is this person, Michael Ronin? Who is this person, Darren Grimes? And have they received the sort of conditions which facilitate the fullest expression of who they are as a unique individual? So, yeah, there's what shall I say about that?
When you were doing the Montessori thing, did you notice any sort of overlap with the Jungian archetypes or the Myers-Briggs personality types? Did you notice any evidence for that framework?
Not at the time. That's a really good question. I'd have to go back and think about that, but I'm very much into. I like the Myers-Briggs stuff and the Enneagram and all of these things which are reference points, which help us see who we are. And the flip side is that if you get attached to a particular label, then it can potentially define who you are. But I find it very, very useful. I'm an INFJ, which is an introvert, but it's the most outgoing introvert, and I comprise 1% of the population. There are only 1% of INFJs in existence. So that kind of gives me a perspective of being on the edge of society. I get to stand back and make maps and look at how culture is formulated. I mean, you could even say I'm a cultural anthropologist with an interest in men and masculinity. But so I see culture presently I see culture through the lens of masculinity, because that's the most important thing for me anyway at this time. But going back to true nature, and this is the spiritual context as well. A lot of spiritual people think that we spring from like an ocean, and we're indistinguishable from each other within this ocean until we become a drop of water which is ejected into our incarnate existence. And then when we die, we go back into that ocean, and then, we kind of blend into all the other drops and don't have this sort of like uniqueness. But I believe we never lose that aspect. I used to believe that. I used to believe that part of us would melt back into that ocean. But I actually now regard it that we never lose that. It remains forever. We don't lose that part of us. And it's part of our unique soul, part of our unique identity. And our unique self, the unique being that makes me different from you and always will do. And so each one of us is this very, very unique being. And even though we're all made of this ocean, we all remain unique. So obviously that resonates with me. It may not resonate with some of your listeners who have other spiritual leanings, but that's the premise for the conscious man.
Well, most of them don't get out of the ocean in 2021, it feels like.
Right.
I mean, it seems like we're stuck in a state of perpetual adolescence, which is probably the reason that we're falling into those sort of labels that you're talking about, is because, I mean, there's not a lot of men walking around, in my opinion. It's like 1 in 10.
Well, I mean, yes, I mean, I would agree with you. It's, even though we can experience life consciously, it seems that we're largely predisposed to certain scripts that we carry. And these are either internal scripts or external from our leaders, our society, our culture, whatever. And all of these things favor a state of unconscious thought and unconscious behavior. So being unconscious, I would define as lacking free will, and to be operating from a place of automation, which so that kind of segues kind of nicely into what the hell is conscious? What is a conscious man? And so a conscious man, on the flip side, is a man who has free will, a man who's capable of having his own thoughts. And so rather than the thoughts which have been internalized in him due to prior conditioning by others, So he's the sort of man that conducts an internal inquiry and asks himself about himself, and ask himself, what is my programming? What distortions do I carry? What illusions do I carry? What are the ideas that are holding me hostage and that I can't see, but I have a sense that they are within me? What are the belief systems that I carry that are limiting me about myself, about the thoughts that are limiting me about seeing reality as it really is? So I describe it as he is basically a private investigator, a PI of his own soul, and
The subconscious playground.
yeah.
That's what
And
you put in your book. I'm
This
quoting
is
that out of your book.
There is so much meat there. There's so much meat in this unconscious playground. It's scary and dangerous to a lot of people, because when they get in touch with negative feelings, they have a choice. They can either walk towards those feelings or they can run from them. They can suppress and disown those feelings. So a conscious man walks towards those feelings with curiosity. And the more aware we are, the more our consciousness increases. And the more things make sense to us, the better the decisions we make in this world. And the more aligned we are with who we are, the more aligned with what is, the objective reality, the less delusional and the less confused we become, and the better human beings we become.
And you peel away that, you get to that acorn again, which your true self, right? Hopefully. Well, I mean, isn't that that would be, to me, it seems like one of the goals is to find that authentic self in there somewhere.
Exactly. So, as a kid, we didn't have a chance. We had no skills or opportunity to walk towards that pain. We were immature. Until we became mature, we never had the opportunity to do so. But once we reach adulthood, then we can start asking ourselves those questions. And some of the questions that you might ask is what happens if I strip away all of those programmings, all of those conditionings, all of those belief systems which have been implanted in me, and what remains after that? Once I've removed all the garbage that's inside me, my contention is that what remains is our true nature.
Yeah.
Is there any way to hack that, or what's missing? Because I feel like we're maybe a few dozen, or we're within maybe at least earshot of that being more ubiquitous throughout all the cultures. And it seems like, it's really started to break down over the last couple 100 years, and the last couple of dozen especially. Do you think there's something missing in the modern experience?
I think our masters know how to program us really well. They've been studying us a very, very long time. And, the programming that our parents received, they pass on to us. The programming that our parents' received was passed on to our parents, and so on. We basically have to begin the journey of unpicking it all. And it's tough. I mean, especially that there is a sense-making crisis in our world today. It used to be that we get all our information from the legacy media. You read the newspaper in front of the fireplace 100 years ago, and you would think you would understand the world because you read the newspaper, and the newspaper told you what to believe. It presented a world that made sense to you. And then there came this thing called the internet, and suddenly a whole slew of information that was previously unavailable was made available, and people began the process of waking up and discovering that some of the programming they received, some of the narratives they received, were in fact false. And there's always been moments in history when the curtain has been lifted up and you see the Wizard of Oz operating the levers behind the curtain, but generally speaking, they're pretty good at keeping that curtain in place. The internet has made that life for them very, very difficult. It's been both a blessing and a curse for humanity. We have our heads, kids have their heads down in their devices for on average 7 or 8 hours every day. From the age of 8 to 17, I think it's between 6 and 8 hours. And so they're losing the ability to actually connect at the human level a lot of the time, and we can get into that later. I mean, there's a lot of dysfunctionality. For instance, ghosting is coming into common parlance, is where, someone, you maybe have a relationship with someone and then they piss you off and you ghost them. And ghosting basically means never getting in touch with them again. And usually that means through electronic media. So where was I going with that?
Yeah, I think Darren was trying to find out how we hack that, how we hack Darren, the genetic coding of like just those layers of programming, or?
Well, I don't know if it's like there's programming and then there's comfort and then there's fear and there's just a bunch of sort of things piled on top of each other that, I mean, it seems like the strongest men or the best men I know or I've had the pleasure of being in touch with, they kind of got there through some sort of hardship or darkness or tragedy or some sort of real form of initiation, like, and other people are doing it with breakthrough psychedelic experiences, and it just seems to be that there needs to be like a real break of a psyche to turn the page from just wanting to watch the TV all the time to try to create a better world for yourself and everyone around you, and maybe just a better world in general at the high end of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And of course, how do we go about doing that? Of course, you have to start waking up. And of course, what's the impetus for waking up? What's the impetus for growing up? There's a difference between those two things. Growing up is more complex. I'm speaking about waking up in the spiritual context, but growing up is more complex than waking up, and but it's as essential as waking up. And in the book, I largely focus on growing up, developing one's character and the way you understand the world. And I touch upon waking up in a chapter called Unity Consciousness. But it's important to focus on both. But this internal and external dialogue is very, very important. We need people to challenge us. Being in a men's group, we sweetly challenge each other to encompass different perspectives. Most spiritually minded people focus on their inward expansion of their consciousness, but the outward expansion exists on the same continuum as well. But both are of equal importance, and both, I would say, are vital in one's journey as a conscious man. And so many people have a very, very unbalanced approach to it. They either think that if they're spiritual, then they pretty much ignore big stage politics and how the world is shaping them. They think they're shaping themselves. They think that their dysfunctionality is a product of their own mind and nothing to do with society in which they grew up. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got people who devote themselves to running for office or campaigning or finding out the truth. The sort of investigative journalists or citizen journalists who focus on that end of the spectrum of bringing that level of consciousness into public awareness, and they don't focus on the spiritual side. They don't go inwards for themselves. All of this is on a continuum, and I think it's necessary for conscious men to embrace both for a full understanding of what it is to live in this world and how civilization is shaped to enslave their minds and their productive capacities. Both how the powerful have rigged our lives to predispose us to mental confusion and mental illness at the personal level, and also how they've rigged society to essentially, although we don't perceive it as such, we live in a tyranny. It's presented as a modern democracy, but this is smoke and mirrors, and I can talk about this later.
Yeah, for sure. I also later want to get into the spiritual aspect that you talk about. I would call it maybe like the mindfulness trap or the power of positive thinking trap, like, where instead of taking action or whatever. So I definitely want to dig into that a little bit. But while we're still kind of just talking about Darren's question, the shadow work seems to be a very important part to me. And maybe what's happened to the examples that Darren gave us is that unbeknownst to those men, they've been through some shadow work, maybe to get out of that, to get out of the darkness or the dark night of the soul or addiction or like hitting bottom or the initiation or breakthrough. Like maybe that's how it's happened a little bit.
Maybe, but I think I worry that our lack of it on a whole is what's sort of steering the whole shit. Because, I mean, don't get me wrong. I like to bitch about them all day because they're fuckers and they're ruining everything. But to a large extent, we just sort of we're responsible for that, for just taking the easy way, not saying that thing that's gonna rock the boat, just on times that by a fucking couple of 100 million, a couple of dozen times a day, and all of a sudden we don't. I guess the point I'm trying to make is we don't get off here so easy of just passing the buck because I guess for the same reasons I mentioned before. I don't know. I just feel like that's a concern especially with it seems like there's there's a problem with modern masculinity, like you've pointed out, and it's heading in a bad direction. And I worry that we need to really take part of that is us taking responsibility for what we've sort of let go in the name of security or comfort or just taking the easy way. I mean, it's just taking the easy way instead of the authentic way. And we're all doing it at some level every day. Some of us more than others, and some of us, to a bad extent that we're stuck in a life that we don't like.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easy. It's easy to be unconscious. There is a comfort in being comfortably numb, to go to the Pink Floyd song. Comfortably numb is a way of coping with this world. It's not easy to be a conscious man. You get to be disillusioned. And when I say disillusioned, I mean it in two senses. You get to be free from illusion. You get to be disillusioned. You also get to be disillusioned. You get to be sad at what you see. You don't get to be numb at what you see. You have to contest with it because you've woken up. Now, so I can see why a number of people. I actually think, we're a polarized society in many respects, but we're also a polarized society in that more and more people are becoming unconscious, and more people are becoming conscious.
I agree.
As well.
Yep. There's the middle is less now, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So there's cause for celebration. And if you subscribe to the 100th Monkey, perhaps you're familiar with that term. The more conscious people there are in the world, the better the chance we have of making it into the sort of world we want to inhabit. So, conscious men use any number of approaches to deal with their shadow aspects, which may include various therapies, journaling or meditation or somatic practices like yoga, self-reflection. Being an introvert, I like solitude and journaling. And of course, I have my men's group, and I've been to Peru for plant medicine ceremonies. San Pedro is my favorite. I love that substance more than ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is a sledgehammer.
Try some DMT, bro.
San Pedro is like a gentle grandfather. Anyway, so there are a number of ways to cultivate self-compassion and radical authenticity as a conscious man. But because our society is so hugely individualistic, that integrating those shadow aspects is so problematic. For the most part, it's considered a personal process. It's up to you to do it. There's no support for you to come into the fullness of your being and be a full human being, because our leaders don't want you to be. They want bricks and a wall. The educational system is there to design to produce bricks and a wall. So why should they make you the best man that you could be? So it's up to us. It's a personal thing. It's not a collective thing. And I think that needs to change. The sort of society we need to design would include the facilitation of all men and women coming into the fullness of their beings.
I don't know. I could go Mad Max too. I mean, lately I really feel like I could go either way.
You see that's I definitely resonate with that. I mean, I'm a prepper, and I take that sort of scenario very seriously, but at the same time, that's not the sort of world I want to inhabit.
Yeah, you talk about that. I mean, you talk about these solutions in your book too. The group, like the group solution, and also the righteous anger kind of thing. Like, which is, I think that's what Darren's talking about. I mean, he's got a whole chapter there about, not just getting angry, talking about it, or whatever, but there's an anger that's okay. There's a proper anger.
Yeah. So there's two different angers. There's the egoic anger, which is the sort of vapid, self-referential anger. When you get angry at someone who's like crossed you in some way, maybe they stole an idea from you or they cut you up in traffic or whatever. That's egoic anger, and the conscious man, I think, would be well advised to address that in himself and integrate it and transcend that. But there's another type of anger, which is the anger that we experience, which involves righteous anger at the sort of world that we live in. And this anger is very different. It comes from a place of love and respect. And the root of such anger is optimism that's been frustrated. Looking around us, we know that there is a better world that could be brought into existence. And there's so much anger that we don't fucking live in it. You may remember the movie Network, from a while. I think it was the early 70s, and one of the characters in there, Howard Beale, who was the newscaster, his fame, if I can remember it, he said, all I know is that the first thing you've got to
your quotes in the book
is that you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being, god damn it, my life has value. And that's the sort of anger that I think is beautiful and virtuous. I will stand up for my life because my life has value. Your life has value. How dare they do this to us? How dare they?
Yeah.
Now, there's a difference between that anger and vapid anger. And a lot of, you see, that sort of, any anger can be shamed. But there is a worthy anger. This sort of worthy anger has a different quality from this self-satisfied anger. But the message from society is that anger is a negative emotion. And how dare you be angry? You're just a toxic masculine man. Because toxic men are angry. Or in spiritual circles, getting angry represents a vibrationally low state of being. So, dude, don't get angry because hell, you won't be able to ascend. That vibration will hold you down. So I think there's nuance there, and that's part of what I write about in the book is that we can go to these extremes, but there is nuance in every single situation that we have to be aware of. Anger is neither good nor bad. Anger can trap us or it can liberate us.
Yep, I love that. It's hard to not fall into that trap though once you start getting anger and negative, because I find that line so thin where it's between being of higher vibration, because I do think that is important, but not all, being everything, almost like maybe, I don't know, like a spiritual gangster or something, where you can sort of tread both those in a conscious way. It's
yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, the trick is to surf your emotions and not be subsumed by them, to let them come, to let them inhabit your body, but to ride them like you're riding a wave on a surfboard.
Yeah.
And even to be able to get back on the board if you fall off for a minute.
Right. Yeah.
So who's doing it right? Who's out there right now? Who are sort of your role models? Who can we be looking up to? Other than, of course, Michael Ronin.
Yeah, just Michael Ronin. I actually really like Russell Brand, the comedian Russell Brand. He basically is a conscious man. He's interested in spirituality. He's interested in creating a better world. And I look at him as a role model. You know, we're all human. We all have faults, and I have faults. So there is a danger in looking to gurus and role models, because then we copy them, and we don't represent our true nature in this world. We represent their true nature. But given that, I think, you know, we're all sovereign beings, but we need to claim that sovereignty and know what it means to us, and not carry an illusion that we are in fact holding someone else's sovereignty in our own body, someone we really admire or love. You know, many of this, I mean, I like Adi Ashanti, for instance, but I was in a Sangha recently, and the people there were speaking the way he spoke, in these very hushed, gentle, reverential tones, in the hope that somehow by osmosis they would get his enlightenment inside them. It wasn't coming from them. They were trying to inhabit him in order to reach their own fullness of being, rather than going inside themselves and using him as a map maker, if you like.
Yeah. Fascinating. So, I mean, there's so many questions I have. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go next with this? Where do you think is appropriate?
Let's see. I guess I could. Well, as you know, there are so many areas that we cover in the book. I could talk about. Let's talk about feminism. Let's talk about something, you know, hot button. So, sure. Feminism. I used to be a feminist. I was a feminist for a good 30 years of my life. And so, first of all, I have to say that I place an emphasis on men and women treating each other with respect and compassion and kindness. And my interest is how we go about producing a culture which fosters well-adjusted human beings. That's number one. But I came to the conclusion that I believe that feminism would bring that sort of society around. I thought that it would bring about a fairer, kinder world once the inequalities between the sexes had been addressed. But then I either grew up or woke up. I don't know. But I felt I suddenly realized I had been conned by feminism, and
could it have also been, sorry to interrupt, could it have also been that it was co-opted along the way?
Actually, I've done the research on this, and it's always been
so
a movement for female supremacy from the very, very earliest days, from their original manifesto, if you like. But of course, they present their struggles as struggles for equality. But you know, consciousness involves seeing things as they really are, and the feminist movement adversely affects men's life circumstances, and that's why I devote a whole chapter of my book into it. In fact, of all the things that are out there, I would say the most deleterious in terms of men's lived experience day to day is feminism, and how its effects have rippled out into society. So I'm choosing to focus on feminism for that simple reason, because of the real world implications that it has. Especially
over the last few years, I guess, probably, along with the rest of the sort of identity politics and intersectionalization and all that.
Right.
It seems like it's not really organic. It's coming from something that doesn't want us to continue with the way Western civilization is going.
Yeah, it's been co-opted like so many other movements. I mean, I write in the book about how the ruling elite fan the flames of dysfunctionality in society in order to divide and conquer us. Feminism is no different. They see feminism as a proxy war between men and women. They want it to be a proxy war, but it's essentially that's what it is. It's not. It's just a way of dividing us, because historically men and women have cooperated with each other, however dysfunctionally. And now it's a multi-million-dollar industry. If you do a Google, I mean, you might want to do it now. Do a Google search, how to fight feminism. Anybody at home, just put that in the search engine, how to fight feminism. I guarantee you, every single search result that comes up will return a search result which is pro-feminist. I guarantee it.
Oh, I'm in the Brave browser though. That might be different. I didn't Google it. I DuckDuckGo'd it. So.
Oh, you fucking can't DuckDuckGo it. Come on. Come on.
Because what came up was avoiceformen.com.
Oh.
And the swaddle.com. And then women fighting against feminism. So the key is like, don't use Google.
I have no idea.
What's the swaddle.com?
I don't know.
Click on it. See what happens.
Okay. Yeah, let me do that here. Oh,
sounds like a party.
Oh my God, my computer's
a swaddle party
or something.
You've been clicking on. You've been on too many swaddle websites. You got a bunch of viruses.
All the arguments you need to convince doubters of feminism. So
Damn.
Damn.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'm so happy. Yeah, I guess by comparison, we should do it with Google.
Wait, what is it? Wait, say that title again.
What it said: all the arguments you need to convince doubters of feminism. So this is, you're right. This is.
All right. Well, let's try and convince Michael. What's the first argument?
Okay, I'm gonna Google.
No.
I'm gonna Google it.
Let's try and convince Michael.
Okay.
Let's see if it works. Maybe he'll throw out this whole chapter.
Maybe they'll change my mind.
Yeah, he's like second edition. I
can withdraw the book from publication.
That's it. Stop the presses.
No, I can't.
Graham doesn't look
can't.
convinced.
No, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't. I'm too confused right now on this whole thing. I can't do it.
Well, like you were saying, you were asking about the history of feminism and if it's always been the way it is now. And
okay, hang on. Sorry.
Okay.
This is the difference. So I Google it, and the top one that comes up, of course, is The Atlantic, and it says, "How anti-feminism is the gateway to the far right." I mean, this is like they're already like calling us far right just for talking about it. Okay. What is feminism fighting? No, men are not the enemy. What is the problem with feminism? Mark Manson, that came up. Arguments against feminism and how to refute them. So that's what the swaddle is that I missed before. So it's saying how do you refute the arguments against feminism? So they're teaching people to argue, with us basically, or with you.
Mark Manson does drive me crazy half of the time, but the other half of the time he seems brilliant.
Yeah, they've got the Council of Europe here, Petite to Queen. What do feminists actually still fight for today? South Korean men are fighting against feminism. CNN. Anyways,
I wonder if we're far right now.
It is quite a different.
I got called racist the other day.
Did you? You can't be racist. You're not white.
I know. This is what I thought. You know what I said? I posted a picture of my my downed moose from the moose hunt.
Yeah.
And
your masculinity.
Yes.
Coming right through that picture.
Yeah, it's too masculine. So they asked if it made me feel tough or dominant or something like that. And I said, it mostly makes me feel like a fat Indian. And then they called me a racist Donald Trump supporter.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
So then I tweeted.
Did they really call you a Donald Trump supporter?
Yes.
It's getting so bad that if you even put any anti-mask stuff out, they call you conservative.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's really that's what's happening. I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah. This is like really what's going on. And you know what you should have said? You should have said, "I feel safe for the winter." With that moose.
Actually, he apologized next day.
Did he really?
Next, I posted a picture of my status card that says "Certificate of Indian Status."
Equals can't be racist.
Equals can't be racist. This is it. He apologized next day, said he was drunk.
Wow.
So I forgave him.
Yeah.
We moved on. Well, you might say that was very for him to come up and apologize like that is
Conscious.
conscious.
There you go.
Do you agree, Michael?
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
Okay, let's get back into feminism then. I think we should finish
Okay.
off that part of the chat. Sorry for derailing
Okay.
you there.
No,
That'll
that's okay.
happen.
There's just one other point that I wanted to make before we move on to another subject. You were asking about the history of feminism, and even historically, feminism has been anti-man. And one of the examples I give is the white feather movement. There was actually a movie made about this, kind of a Lawrence of Arabia type movie. I forget the name of it, but the white feather movement was where you had groups of women who were roaming the streets of London, and I'm sure other cities as well, but probably London during World War I. And what they would do is they would look for young men of an age for conscription, and if they saw one who was out of uniform, they would pin a white feather on that man in order to shame him and humiliate him for not enlisting in the war. And then you have, so that was first wave feminism. And second wave feminism, you got the likes of Gloria Steinem and Betty Friedan, who they actually attacked women rather than men. They went after the housewife in order to shame her to entering the workforce, because women, their task in this new world was to usurp the role of the male and not focus on motherhood, not focus on being a wife, a stay-at-home wife, because her special talents and qualities would be hidden from the wider world. No matter if those women wanted to inhabit those gender roles, the feminists were strongly attacking those particular women, because by sticking in those gender roles, they made the task of feminists competing with men in the workplace that much harder.
Weren't they connected with the CIA too? Am I thinking that right? Gloria Steinem and them? I thought there was some people talking about her being funded or connected to the CIA.
Oh, that's very interesting. I haven't come across that. I'd be interested in if you have anything on that. But
yeah,
no, I hadn't come across that.
I'll let you know. I'm pretty sure I've heard that.
What wave are we on now?
Well, it's getting confusing. It's the third wave or the fourth wave, depending upon how you look at it and how you define it. And, it kind of gets to a point where it's so ridiculous that it doesn't really matter, because, third wave feminism is broadly concerned with catastrophizing women's experience, and catastrophizing all the little slights that they might receive at the hands of men, like mansplaining and man-interrupting, manspreading, telling mildly blue jokes, to such an extent that they'll go after his job, they'll go after his reputation. And they've done it. They've done it to numerous men, which I detail in the book. And they're basically focusing on these minor transgressions because there's nothing left to fight for. They've achieved material equality. More than that, they have some privileges that men don't have, especially in family court, especially in sentencing. Sentencing disparities exist between the genders. Men are given longer sentences than women for the same crime. And if we live in an equalized society, why would that be the case? Retirement, look at retirement age. There's a difference there between the sexes. Women they can retire earlier than men. Why? Why is that? So there are many privileges that women experience that men don't. But modern day feminists have no interest in equalizing those privileges for women. They just want more privileges.
We could just leave it at equal and just let everyone do what they want.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, there's a couple things. There's a couple
Graham
things
is a
here.
heavy man spreader.
I know. I want to talk about that.
He takes it to the
I
next
want to talk
level.
about that because
I
my
feel like
legs
it's
do
over the
not
top.
go the other way. This is a problem I have with this. I'm short and stocky, right? And my legs open like that, and it hurts to close them.
Oh yeah, I could see him
It hurts
getting some guff. He's like a
It
can opener.
hurts to close. Like that's the way I sit. That's the way they go. It's not like I'm doing that on purpose. For me to go like that,
I could
it
see your
hurts.
testicles in between there. You should get looser pants.
It hurts. It hurts to do that. after a while, your
Where does it
muscles, my
hurt?
muscles don't,
Where does
they
it
don't
hurt?
sit like that in my legs. Like
Because
it's
the
like you're
thighs
flexing
match
your
the
muscles.
calves.
It's the worst fucking thing I've ever heard, this man spreading bullshit. Oh, it drives me bonkers. So
And,
here,
you know,
this is
this-
interesting. So
You wouldn't be allowed on the bus.
Gloria Steinem, how the CIA used feminism to destabilize. So there's
wow.
a SaveTheMales.ca thing here, and there's also all that's interesting.com. I'm just reading like the headline type thing, but before she was the face of the second wave feminism, she was the anti-communist operative for the CIA and went undercover with Playboy to expose their
Wow.
misogynistic practices. She was a journalist
website?
and activist who rose to prominence as a stylish frontwoman of the women's liberation movement of the 70s. But there's a ton of articles about, did the CIA use her to subvert the feminist movement? Did she really work for the CIA? Of course, you're going to get all these fact checks that are probably really fun to deconstruct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that would make
Yeah.
sense if feminism sort of started to get equal rights, and then the state comes in. They're like, "No, we got to get these bitches working. We need those tax dollars."
And we need the division. We need the divide and conquer. I mean, I think that seems to be the most important thing at this point. Is we're chopped up and divided into so many ways right now.
Some of the chops reunite, though.
That they don't, yeah, but they don't. Not enough.
Not
There's
enough?
There's too many other
There's
polarizations
too many other
happening.
chops. Chip,
Yeah.
chop, chop, chop.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
Like that's what I was hoping for. That this, like the vaccine push, would reunite too many. All these factions would sort of unite, but it doesn't seem to be.
It's just further shattered.
Yeah.
You know, part of the reason for that is that men are, like I said, are experiencing a crisis of masculinity because of this drip, drip, drip war against men. And, you know, modern men are now having a hard time of finding a way to be in the world that makes sense to them. And, you know, the millennials, they have so many... I feel so bad for them. This is one of the reasons I write the book. It's personal as well. I personally have so much empathy for their experiences and the struggles that they're going through that we didn't never experience. You know, they're dealing with social, financial, academic, spiritual, sexual issues that we never did, and they don't have the maturational ability to deal with them because they were brought up in single parent households, usually single mother. They've been products of a dumbed down educational system. And most of the conversation that takes place is around traditional masculinity that focuses on masculine norms, masculine traits, which are perceived as harmful or violent or toxic to those around them. Yet, you know, you can look at it a number of ways. And again, I present a nuanced perspective of this. I look at how modern men have been conditioned, and I also look at how traditional men were conditioned, because, you know, traditional men in their times were an asset to society. They were the builders of civilization. They went to wars, went to war and died in the millions. They were there for us. They were there to be a resource to defend, protect, and provide for women, kids, and country. You know, these were good men. These were traditional men, but they also had a shadow aspect of their own. And traditional men were, they had the qualities, you know, they would sacrifice themselves. They felt a sense of duty. They had this industriousness. All of that's great. But they were so busy surviving and protecting and fighting and gathering resources in the workplace and on the battlefield that they left their hearts behind. They were all spine and no heart. Think of John Wayne. You know, it's like that kind of gruff macho male. You know, the all spine and no heart. And then you get the 60s where you get a complete flip around. You get men who dress in long flowing robes and wear wooden beads, grow their hair long, wear necklaces and flowers in their hair, and dance to to sweet music in circles, and these were men who were all heart and no spine. You know, the pendulum swung the complete opposite direction. So historically, men have been trying to find themselves for a very long time. We've become dissociated from what it is to be a man, not just recently, but historically as well.
And now the millennials have to deal with this cancel culture, and there's no path to redemption for the canceled sinners. You know, that's the other part of it. I mean, imagine how you have to tread so lightly, no matter what what you do now. And I mean, you gotta. Oh, it just.
Yeah, they have to walk on eggshells.
Yeah.
You know, and they're now internalizing this label of being a toxic man, toxic masculinity. Their very identity is tied to that phrase. And
if they're white, they're racist.
They're ashamed to carry themselves in this world.
And if they're white, they're racist automatically.
Yeah,
they're privileged.
Exactly. So yeah, I feel I feel so bad for them to be alive now and to having to navigate their way through this world, which is one of the reasons I wrote this book. They don't. I mean, maybe we used to derive a sense of our manhood from our fathers or from other men, but these guys may never have encountered a male role model in their lives if they grew up just with their mother or in a school where most of the teachers were female. If they did have a father and there was divorce and the father didn't get any custody rights, they never got to find out what it is to be a man. Perhaps their mother poisoned their minds against him so that they began to see him as toxic. You know, there's just so much dysfunctionality.
Yeah, it's good to think about. And then there's the part about, I mean, we could sort of segue a little bit into the trap of spiritual, the new age kind of spiritual positive thinking and mindfulness, because you talked about that started probably a lot of it, or at least accelerated in the 60s with the flowers in the hair and all that. And let's just be mindful and positive.
Yeah.
And at what peril, right? How do we balance mindfulness, which would help create discernment, which is very important, especially right now, but mindfulness to become conscious, but not to become sedentary or passive when we should be righteously angry, for example.
Yeah. Of course, in the marketplace, anything can be monetized, and mindfulness is no exception. People want to be mindful, and there's money to be made in that by offering them services. I talk about the Chinese persecution of Buddhist monks in Tibet, and of course how the Tibetan monks then had to flee Tibet. But the good part of that is that the diaspora went to every single corner of the globe and brought with them insights about mindfulness and about meditation.
Interesting. Yeah, I never thought about that. Yeah.
So this is great. But of course, then it starts to get monetized because we live in a capitalist system. There's money to be made. So you can make money on mindful meditation. And what it does is it takes people away from critically appraising the world around them and makes them focus on their inner world. And it's just a more evolved way of coping with the ravages of capitalism. And that's a problem with Eastern religions, in my view, because most of those religions suggest that the causes of our own suffering are internal, they're self-generated, and it's simply our attitudes which cause us pain. And there's very little focus placed on our political and economic and cultural systems which shape the way that we live in a world which is fast and furious and stressful. Human beings were not meant to have these unbearable stress loads in their lives. And part of the shadow aspect of mindfulness is that it allows human beings to withdraw from the outer realm into the inner realm and to escape. It's a form of escapism. They get to escape from the wider world, which is causing them unhappiness, and simply focus on their own inner peace, if it can be achieved. So, it's tough. It's tough.
But there is a balance there, because I mean there is like it does help with discernment. I mean it does help to not get trapped in the negative self thinking and all the perils that come along with not being mindful or conscious, you know. But I also want to make a point that I think even in your book you mentioned it too. Capitalism, it's more of the control system, I think, that you're saying that we're escaping from. Capitalism just happens to be that what is in place right now.
Right. Yeah, the market mechanism, I guess I should really say, you know, we live in a world where we produce goods and services for profit, to make money. And if you can monetize something, then it will be monetized, and mindfulness is no exception.
Right.
I mean, speaking of Buddhist monks, like that T Quang dude, like burned himself in fucking Vietnam and didn't even flinch.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, talk about like mastery over everything.
Exactly.
Everything, right. Over suffering, over
pain,
all
physical pain. I mean, they can melt the ice. I mean, they can do all kinds of stuff just by their mind, you know, the power of their mind. I mean, but yeah, I can see it being a trap as well, you know.
Yeah. There's a marketplace for consumers,
but it's a good start. I mean, because there's going to be a bunch of people that are like, well, I can't fucking do this, I got this going on and that going on, you know. It's a place to start. Maybe you can't fix your external circumstances right now, but you can start working on your internal circumstances like this second.
Yeah, and teasing out those facts and emotions. Like I've got some notes here about the shadow work you talk about, and like we do have to discern fake emotions from real emotions and facts, and you know, I think mindfulness can help with that.
Yes, absolutely. This is a tool that the conscious man has in his arsenal, and although I you know, again, it's about nuance. I talk about both sides of the same coin. You have to be aware that take for instance the medical industrial complex. This is not about making people well. This is about keeping people sick and making money off it. You could apply the same paradigm to the mindfulness industry. It's not about creating a world where we don't have to deal with the overwhelming stress. It's about having to deal with the stress in an overwhelming world.
Right. That's a good way to put it. So, I mean, I do want to get into controlling the control system a little bit. I think advice for single men and being cautious about getting into relationships and how to break up. Maybe there's some advice there. And then, of course, the path forward. Those are some things that I definitely want to touch on before we run out of time. So,
sure. Yeah. Where would you like to start?
Maybe controlling the control system, which we were kind of just talking about, but you do have a good, I mean, the thing I liked about your book is you do talk about both sides of things. It's not just very dogmatic one way. It's a lot of it seems like common sense to me. It feels like it really resonates with just as truth, you know, but we're stuck in this matrix, and it surprised me how much you got into that a little bit about the controlling elite and the system that we're in. So I guess I've got a note here, just controlling the control system. I guess maybe getting into some of that. I mean, once we become awakened, you did mention it's hard. It's the disillusion is difficult. It can be saddening. It can be overwhelming sometimes. I mean, I just get that feeling going to Safeway after I podcast, and I see a bunch of people just scared in masks still in June right now. And it's just like, I have to try and insulate myself from that. I guess that would be a sort of a practical example of what we're dealing with every day now.
Yeah. There's so many different things well, I mean, as far as the lockdowns and the mask wearing and the whole COVID thing, you know, I have my perspective on this. I didn't write about it specifically in the book, but what I did talk about was...
you touched on it,
I touched on politicized medicine.
Yeah.
And that's what it's become. You know, what we have to realize is that being able to fully understand the circumstances in which we live is very, very difficult, because our masters who master the control system don't want us to know. They hide a lot of the information from us. and all we can do is peek around the edges of the curtain and try and figure out what the hell is going on. So if anybody thinks they know exactly how the whole COVID situation came to be, what preparations were made ahead of time, how the political elites, what their game plan was, then, I take that with a grain of salt. I'm curious about it, but because of this veil of secrecy on every aspect of our existence, which exists, we can never fully understand everything. And again, that's coming back to the nuance of it. We do our best, but we understand that if we have a 100% certainty about our condition, then we're probably wrong.
Yeah. So the advice for that would be then try and discern, or try not to attach to narratives, outcomes. I mean, which is what we try and do here all the time. I mean, it's a constant battle of trying to be aware or insightful about things without being sure,
Yeah, that's what we just have to. We have to just be curious, and we have to be rigorous. Both of those things at the same time. It's very easy to buy into. We understand that we're being fed bullshit most of the time, and certainly the three of us do. So there is a temptation to look at alternative information as being more authoritative. And that's a trap we can fall into as well.
Yeah.
Again, it's having to there is a sense-making crisis going on right now. We're presented with, it's very interesting because, like I was saying before, we would read the newspaper and that would give us our news, and then we could make sense of the world because the world was presented to us in a sensible way. Nowadays, there is such a glut of information out there, most of which is bullshit. The story of our times is not. The story of our times is trying to prune away all that useless information to find good information. Good information is out there, but accessing it if you have to read 100 articles in order to get to the 101st article, which is any good, then you've wasted so much of your time, and that's a problem. There is a problem with, if you like, free speech in that sense, because people are free to peddle false narratives, to peddle bullshit, and it takes bandwidth in order to process that bullshit, and I don't have time in my day to do it.
It's better, at least you're getting two sides. If there's free speech, you get two sides of bullshit and not one that gets to control.
You get 100 shades of bullshit.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, at least it's all there. I mean, the problem I have with the censorship and the way it's going right now is they're in control of all the bullshit narratives,
sure.
and more so than they should be. I'd rather have it open source in a way. Yeah. But I mean, not that we have time either way to do that, but that's kind of my issue with it.
I welcome the amount of information that's out there, but I want a way to pass through it quickly in order to get to the meat and not have to filter out all that bullshit.
We're just gonna keep burying the meat, bro. That's
yeah.
You're not even gonna know what the fuck's meat anymore and what's fake meat pretty soon.
Yeah,
I'll know because I shot that shit. I'll probably get some emails.
I mean,
for that.
there's something about. I mean, that kind of gets into. Do we even pay attention to it? I mean, do we even give it our attention? I mean, why shouldn't we just ignore all that internet and our black mirrors and do what Darren's doing and go out in the woods and hunt for your food for the winter and just focus on,
Because then we're at their mercy. Yeah. They control the landscape of thinking, the landscape of thought. The most important real estate on the planet is the space between your ears. And if you allow them to occupy that space, either because you've opted out of the system, or you've zoned out, or you've embraced comfortable numbness, then they win. So our thoughts, our ideas.
But is other people's real estate my problem? I mean,
Yeah.
if my real
Sure.
estate is clear, can I just like, have a time?
If you this is one of the premises of my book. We can either operate as individuals doing our own little thing and exercising our own sovereignty in our own little oneness of space, or we can cohere as a species. Now, my contention is that in order to make this world better, we need to cohere as a species.
See, I would contend that if we would all just do the individual thing fucking properly, the world would be a better place. I mean, maybe it's
There's not a
six
lot
of,
of
maybe
people
it's
to
6
cohere
of
with
one and
right now.
half a dozen of the other. But I feel like there's a bunch of people flinging shit, and their yard is full of shit, and it's just like if you just cleaned your yard. I shouldn't even say, oh boy,
Yeah.
wrong analogy.
No, that's fine.
Well, it's like the Jordan Peterson thing now.
That's fine.
But it's just like it's just everyone's shit's such a mess, but they still think they know best. And if you just like worried about getting your shit together and being the best Darren you can be, or fill in the blank, and making the world better for you and those in your immediate vicinity better, then everything would sort of take care of itself. If we weren't just spending so much time worried about other people and more time worried about our personal sovereignty, and I'll add to that our personal responsibility for the earth, for the world, for our civilization, No, but that's my personal responsibility for
Sure.
my part of the world, not my
Sure.
responsibility for what the fuck my neighbor's up to.
Yeah.
Because that to me is just too slippery of a slope into communism or some sort of totalitarian. And I know that's not where you're getting at, but
Yeah.
it just seems like and maybe that's probably my own biases creeping in. But it just seems like I don't want anyone to be worried about what Darren's up to.
Right.
Unless Darren asks, hey, Graham, I need some help. I'm having a hard week. I don't need Graham just butting in. It's like, fuck off. That's going to make our relationship weird. I guess that would be my concern with that sort of cohesion thing. But I do think we have to get there at some point.
Yeah, this is the
But I
important
think
part
that
of the conversation.
starts with personal responsibility.
Sure. I get what you're saying, and I definitely resonate very much with personal sovereignty for myself and for every other conscious man. I also recognize that we are a hypersocial species. Hypersocial. We actually need each other. And the history of humankind has been the history of progressive atomization. And it's come to a crescendo in the 20th and 21st century. We now experience our lives solely and uniquely in terms of our own life, not in terms of other people's life. And it's epitomized by the work of Ayn Rand, who viewed the self-made man, the self-sufficient man, the self-sovereign man as the pinnacle of the human experience. And, the comfortable illusion was that this man could break free of the world in which he found himself and claim his space and create his reality.
Or
And
woman.
of course, in the 1950s, when we were going through a period of economic expansion, that very much reflected that reality. But the bubble popped, and now we've, ever since then, gone through progressively longer and longer periods of contraction. So what happens is that self-made man experiences every failure as a personal failure, his failure, because he's not able to master his own particular environment. He is to blame for the predicament he finds himself in. He is only himself to blame. But for the conscious man, I believe, there is a merging there. There is a nuance. His path is to be the author of his own life, at the same time as acting compassionately for his family, his lover, his community, in an ever-widening circle, going outwards to embrace humankind, and realizing that he brings the best version of himself to the game of life, and that his failures are not necessarily his own. It could be his own. maybe he hasn't done his own work, but they're not just his own failures. They're also the circumstances, his life circumstances he finds himself within. And so I think the human project needs to recognize both two missions. We need the mission of becoming the fullest version of ourselves, and we need the mission of creating the best possible conditions for that acorn to grow into an oak tree.
That makes sense.
What if the acorn's just a dog fucker though, and he's just bitching all the time, and he's just like, I don't even want to be an oak tree. I just want to be an acorn forever. Can we just ignore him?
Well, I mean that there's a conception that we are born in sin, and that potentially would reflect that sort of philosophy that some people are just born to be that sort of person, and I don't share that view. I share the view that we are born inhabiting, that there is an inherent virtue and goodness to mankind which has been perverted by our control systems.
I
So
would
I think
say
that
there's,
once you remove those control systems, you won't get that sort of individual.
but then how would the shadow manifest if?
Well, that's it. I mean, we're always going to have shadows, but there is so much degradation of the human spirit that the shadows we now occupy are enormous. These are ghosts walking around inside our bodies, clanking their chains, demanding our attention.
Even from past genetic, I mean, you do mention examples of your in the book of the trauma survivors of the Holocaust. I mean, it's also you're carrying those from past generations as well.
Yeah, so I make a hypothesis that so what you're talking about is called generational trauma.
Yeah.
And my hypothesis is that this is multi-generational trauma. So essentially, since the dawn of agriculture, when over the last few millennia, we have experienced a civilization as we know it, developing more and more unfavorably as a response to the accumulated and unintegrated shadow aspects and stress and trauma of this existence.
That's really interesting. And we used to be able to handle it at some point, I feel like, or there's a way to handle it, but we're not doing a very good job of it.
Well, the way to handle it is to grow a healthy nervous system, and it's not just automatically given to us. We're not born with a healthy nervous system, and why we don't have a healthy nervous system is because we're unable to process stress. Excessive stress produces trauma, and trauma is anything. Anything that is too much, too soon, or too fast for our nervous system to handle. I think that's the definition of it. Yeah. So we have to be able to put those stresses to bed, to de-escalate them in our bodies. And because we live in this sort of fast and furious world, we're unable to do so. And that creates all sorts of dangerous neurophysiological responses in our bodies that persist from generation to generation.
Yeah, I like that. And there was a time, or there was some cultures that had a way to deal with that stress through that, physical shaking or something. You mentioned something in your book about that.
Yeah. This is something we really don't know. But human beings, just like any other mammal, we are programmed to shake our stresses away. And, when was the last time you shook your stress away? When was the last time I did, or anybody? And yet, when you look at the animal kingdom, this was from Robert Sapolsky's book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. What they do is they shake with fear, and they shake off fear, and they dump adrenaline out of their system. They take about 30 minutes to do that. And what that does is it down-regulates their nervous system and puts them back to a baseline of functionality. They have to go through this. Otherwise, they continue to be on edge 24/7. And the only animals that no longer shake, the only mammals that no longer shake are zoo animals, domestic animals, laboratory animals, and human animals. And what correlates them is that they're all caged. They are in alienating environments. They're taken out of their natural environment and caged.
Even though we're sort of feel free, we're still caged.
Yeah, we have shackles on us that we can't see. These human beings are caged by society. And so we're living in pathological conditions where our emotions become frozen at the cellular level.
Yeah, I really like that. That's fascinating. And then, so Darren's example about the people that just, he's like, well, they're not worth our attention anymore because they're just not gonna participate. So just let them go.
Well, you're looking at modern human beings. These are human beings who've grown up in the control system, who have grown up with dysregulated nervous systems. And if you're supposing that represents human beings' natural, true nature, or then I would definitely contest that. I think that these are alienated, abnormal human beings that you're talking about.
I'm not supposing that anything. I'm just saying that they're not my problem. I guess my point is that my attention is valuable to me, and that, you know, to a certain extent it needs to be earned. You know, like I can't just be worrying about everything all the time. I feel like, I don't know.
Well, I don't think worrying is ever the answer, but maybe.
Concerning myself. Well, I think that's just it. I mean, I don't think I should be concerned with anything but me or mine, or I mean, and if I am, then I guess you've become, you know, in that circle of care. And you probably don't get back out of it. You know what I mean? And I'm a pretty nice guy. Like, I'll help you if I see you broken down. I don't fight with people. I don't yell. I like to consider myself a pretty grounded individual. But, I mean, I can't be worried about everybody all the time. I got my own shit to worry about. I mean, it's a full-time job keeping my shit together.
No, but it's also an interesting time right now where you're kind of, you know, you're prepping as well, right? Like we're at a time where we have to start realizing, like, what if I'm not prepared, how am I going to help anybody else prepare? It's kind of like putting the oxygen mask on yourself first.
It's like if other people get their water when your bucket's overflowing. Yeah. Not because you're dumping out bits of bucket. It's like, this motherfucker taking all my water every fucking week and I barely got any for myself. And you know, that's the danger, I think, of getting into that, of putting the other people ahead of yourself. And I mean, you got it with your kids and stuff like that, and it's going to come up here and there where you need to. But I really think that if you build a strong you, then when that does come up, you'll be in a better position to sort of just help by association. It's sort of like that. It's like the Canadian healthcare system, you know? It's like, it's forced, it's great, we all pay into it until you need something done, and then it's like, fuck, I got to go to America. What else you got, Graham?
Well,
before we wrap up,
I mean, I guess I just would like Michael's closing thoughts, or I guess a path forward. Like, we talked about it a bit now, just going back and forth, but what can some of us do, like, physically, or even just online, or I mean, I don't know, like, what? I feel like we're in such a weird time right now where, you know, I think prepping, being conscious to at least talk to your loved ones.
Prepping.
I know, I don't like it either.
It just seems so like.
But let's say like just preparing. Responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you know, I have a fantasy, and you know the movie The Matrix, where Neo goes and does his training on the Nebuchadnezzar, the ship in the Matrix.
Yeah.
We conscious men need an Nebuchadnezzar. We need somewhere to go where we can learn how to do jujitsu, learn how to do, you know, superhuman skills, if you like, learn how to be the fullest version of ourselves without intervention from the Matrix, without the Sentinels finding us. That would be my call of action to any conscious man listening to this, is to each and every one of you to either create or find an Nebuchadnezzar. I'm currently doing an 8-week course online in something similar, which is run by the YouTube channel Rebel Wisdom.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
I love that channel. Yeah.
Yeah, it's called the Live Player course, and you could basically call it the Conscious Player course, but they like to call it the Live Player. And essentially, what they're doing is this sort of training for higher order human beings, not in the sense of being superior to other human beings, but in creating the sort of human being that can contest with the meta crisis, with the sense making crisis, with the interpersonal relationship crisis, with the cancel culture, the woke crisis, all of this sort of thing.
Yeah.
How you can create human beings to walk in this world and deal with that sort of bullshit and crap. Me, I as you know, I consider us a hypersocial species. I want us to come together around creating a world for fully functional, fully integrated, fully realized individuals as the premise for our coexistence. And that to me is that's the beauty. That's the beauty, the more beautiful world my heart desires. And in order for that to happen, I think we need to replace the current global economic system, which places profit before people, replace it with something more evolved. I think we need to recognize our trauma patternings as a species and as individuals, and recognize, let's come back to masculinity. The world as it's been created has, a man is judged by what he does for society. He's a human he's a human doing. He's not a human being. I want to see a world where we are human beings. Men are human beings. There's so little empathy or consideration that's given to men simply for being a virtuous man. Being a virtuous man doesn't fucking pay the bills. We don't get paid for that. It doesn't compete with getting shit done. But conscious men would do well to work towards that sort of world where we create the fundamental conditions for a society which, let's say we could monetize. If we could monetize wisdom, authenticity, integrity, compassion, courage, if we got paid for internalizing those qualities within us, if we were paid to do that, but we're not. We're paid to produce shit. We're paid to work for people. So, we need to realign our values as a species and actually create optimized human beings rather than optimized market system.
Excellent.
Well said. Where can our listeners track you down if they want to get some more Michael Ronin? Are you any of the social medias or website?
I do have a website. I really don't like social media because it's where people go to become the shittiest versions of themselves.
Yeah.
It's a race to the bottom of the brainstem with most of them because of the algorithms there. So I do have a website, michaelronin.net, and my book is available on Amazon, Modern Masculinity for the Conscious Man, Making Sense in Troubled Times, audiobook coming soon.
Self-narrated.
Self-narrated. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun getting into this.
Excellent.
But Darren, you were saying that about your personal experience. I think you were selling yourself short, because what you're doing along with Graham is a podcast which brings knowledge to the masses. You are reaching out to your fellow man. You are hypersocial. This is good work that you're doing. You're not just in this for yourself.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Well, I might
do this for 8 years.
Well, I might be.
You're a good man, Darren.
No, that's a great
You
point.
too.
Yeah. No, this has been an awesome chat. I really like it, and your book was fantastic. We recommend it to people for sure, and like how you hit everything straight up in the book. And there's a lot of stuff we didn't even cover, but people can go. It's a long book too. How many pages is it? It was hard to tell in the.
Yeah, it's about 420,
Yeah,
something like that.
it's a big book. It was
Yeah,
different reading it
420.
digitally because the pages were kind of smaller. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, so keep in touch. Let us know when the audiobook comes out, and we'll
Will
talk
do.
about it. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. It's been a real pleasure, gentlemen.
Excellent.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for
Thanks a lot.
hosting this.
Okay. Take
Okay.
care.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
And that was a chat with Michael Ronin. What'd you think, buddy?
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, I wanted to get into a little bit about. I just felt like it was a good spot to end, though, you know. But he does give advice to men getting into relationships very cautiously. Like he sees, I think, a lot of what's happening with men in relationships right now, and a lot of them aren't working out. And what are you laughing at?
I'm just fighting with the troll in the chats.
Oh,
It's fun.
that's okay. Yeah.
I
At
wanted
your
the address
mom's-
to come
at
fight me.
At your mom's. You're putting mom jokes in the chats?
Always.
Oh, boy. Who's coming to fight you?
I don't know, the DeLorean.
Why?
I don't know. He seems angry. Speaking of moms, how's your mom?
Is it righteous anger? She's pretty good, I guess. Yeah, she'll be finding out more about her cancer on Thursday, I think. So,
Finally?
Yeah.
Finally gets
Yeah.
to meet?
Yeah, finally gets to
Canadian
talk to the
healthcare,
doctor.
baby.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, but no, it was good. I think it was a good book and a good chat.
it was a good chat. We were his
Yeah.
first time, right?
Oh, I don't know about that.
No.
Yeah.
I thought we were his first. That's why I was nervous.
Oh, no, I don't think he does it very often, but you know,
Oh. Well,
yeah.
hopefully this won't.
But anyways, the book's got a lot of advice for men. Like we didn't even get into like the specific advice for men and dating and relationships and the divine union. It gets into a lot of the relationships, the different types, very spiritual ones as well. And it's just, I don't know. It's a well-rounded book. I like it. Very nuanced.
Did you get a hard copy of it or just digital?
Just digital. We should get a hard copy for the studio.
I just bought some books today.
All right. Yeah, we're building up quite the library. It'll
That's
be
the
good.
only place I
they're
wear
good.
my mask now.
Yeah, I know.
Ferris
They're
Fair won't let me in there.
They're
with the-
terrible. I
They're
know.
just like,
so. Oh my god, they're so scared. Yeah.
yeah. But I went in there. It's a gold mine for books. I just can't give it up.
Yeah.
I mean, I could pick out the books and they'd bring them outside, but I just like to look around.
Yeah.
I
me
really
too,
like
yeah.
to look around
Yeah.
there. It's like,
I go in there with the shield. They don't bug me with the shield.
no, they started. When was the last time we were in there?
A couple weeks ago.
Yeah, last time I went in there with the shield, she was like, hey, just play along.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, we talked about that.
So, yeah, big thanks to Mike for coming on the show. Big thanks to you guys for listening. Head over to grimerica.ca/support if you're getting some value from these shows and you want to throw a little value back our way. Sign up for a monthly, make a one-time donation, any of that fabulous sort of stuff. Head over to the show notes, do all the stuff in there. There's a bunch of ways to help out the show that don't cost you nothing. You can share the show, review the show, sign up for the newsletter. I don't know what else. Maybe you could follow us on Facebook before we get kicked off.
Did you say review? Yeah.
I said review.
Yeah. Join the chats.
Join the chats, grimerica.ca/chats. Get some shirts and shit over at grimerica.ca/swag.
Some audiobooks.
This is a social network, grimerica.ca/social, our self-hosted social network that doesn't have any algos. And there's the audiobooks over at adultbrain.ca. Use your adult brain. Hey, speaking of that, I seen Weiss was on Union of the Wanted.
Yeah. There you go. The Flat Earth.
We have him to thank for our company name.
There you go.
Yeah. I think that's about it. We love you guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Thanks for watching live.
The DeLorean. Shout out from an Indian. Who else can say that? I like it. Good one. All right. Big thanks to you guys for tuning in to the live show. We'll be back Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday, I think.
Are we live tomorrow?
I don't think we're live tomorrow. We might be able to go live tomorrow. The Dangerous World.
No, we're
Pod.
on their show,
We're
not
on
a
their show,
Swapcast.
yeah, yeah.
So you could check out the Dangerous World Post. Maybe we'll be live on their
Yeah.
stuff. I don't know if they go
Tomorrow.
live or not. Have to check that out. We'll be on there, 6:30 tomorrow?
Yeah,
And other than that, we're next Wednesday, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Next Wednesday, we'll be back. If you guys haven't figured out by now, it alternates Tuesday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday. All right, we'll see you guys later. Thanks for tuning in to the live show. Oh, you can't see.